Yeah.
Yes, we can start the webinar. So hello, good morning everyone and welcome, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Olena Grunyuk. I'm regional manager for the Central Eastern region at the SME Banking Club, and I will be your host today. And today we are going to discuss the topic of remote product management. We decided to cover this topic as we received quite a big number of feedbacks from the banks on the challenges that product management teams are facing right now when working remotely. And I'm glad to be joined by Katalin Kauzli, Business Development Director at Partner Hub from Hungary. Hello, Katalin, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to have me here. Yes, hi everyone.
Yes, as you have an experience in the digital product management and implementations with the bank, so we'll be glad to have your portion of advice and to learn your experience in remote product management. So before we start, let me quickly mention some organizational moments. So our webinar is scheduled for half an hour, and we are recording this webinar. So right after we finish, you will receive a video and the presentations. In the end of this webinar, we're gonna have time for your questions. So please type your questions even during the presentations, and we will be ready to answer them in the end. Please type your questions into the chat. So let's go to the topic. So the main challenges that banks are facing right now in the area of product management is two main things. First is the absence of a remote work policy. So just because a big part of the banks before Corona crisis didn't allow even partial remote work, so let's say 1-2 days a week. So that's why just such procedures doesn't exist in the banks. So and this is why now a lot of in the banks, like a lot of endless conference calls, meetings are happening every day, just to substitute the process or define the rules at the moment on the run right now. So definitely the detailed procedure with authorities of each member of the product team with do's and don'ts is really necessary now. And the second thing is IT infrastructure, that in that part of the banks that were not focused on the digital tools implementations. So actually just the IT infrastructure is not ready for this, though there are solutions for remote product management or project management in the markets. There are solutions for digital signatures, etc. So this is just the lack of the digital experience in the internal process of the banks, and that's why actually now is the time to invest in the digital tools. And so we actually think that this is now not an IT thing right now in case of challenges, because the solutions are on the market, but this is just more about the methodology, as actually working remotely for product teams is suitable job, because you measure by the outcome and not by the physical presence. Here, I wanted to show some good examples on the usage of digital tools in the internal process of the banks. So this is some snapshots of the strategies from the two banks. So they were published before the Corona crisis, but at the beginning of this year. And here is a snapshot from Alior Bank strategy in Poland. So this was the focus on the robotization of back office processes, and the 100 robotized processes was a target. And actually, in the sphere of back office and product management, this was the development of robotization platforms and also tools that allow to build applications visually. This is some examples on for the targets for product team. So the target for the bank was to become is to become a technology leader, and the technology should be the advantage, as this bank is. So for the product management teams, so the 2 weeks is a target to the development or implementation of a new product or a business value. Another example is, just wanted to put here from the PKO Bank Polski, also from Poland. So this is a snapshot from their strategy. And this slide is about the priority of moving from a standard course system to the platform-based IT architecture that allows numerous implementation even daily. So more than 45 implementations daily in the bank system. And this actually will allow to implement very quickly different digital solutions, both for customers and for back office processes. And also the robotization of back office and internal process of the banks is the priority. So the robotic processes, also using of the chatbots, not only for the communication with customers, but for example in the HR area, like recruitment talks and using chatbots and video technology. And also wanted to mention here that also in Poland, in BNP Paribas, this was one of the first banks to implement robotics, so fully robotized process for loan disbursement. So any human employee is not needed, to disburse a loan for the customer. And actually now wanted also to show an example of the one of the latest, let's say, so in the end of the last year, so also this example coming from Poland, 3 banks in Poland, PKO, BP, Alior Bank and BNP Paribas, and 2 venture capital funds invested in the Polish startup called Authentic that enables to implement digital signatures from any device that is connected to the internet. So, and this will be used not only for the customers for digital signatures of different agreements and applications, but also for the internal digital documents circulation. So now actually this is also a good moment to use ready-made solutions and to accelerate the cooperation with fintechs that can actually help to implement some products and processes faster, and especially in this situation that we are facing right now. And actually, Katalin, I want to pass a word to you to share your experience in remote work on the products.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Irene. Welcome, everyone. Just a brief introduction. We are Partner Hub, and we have a product called Charlie India Invoice Hub, with which we provide digital invoice management solutions for banks as a white label product. And also we provide this solution as enterprises. For example, for banks as enterprises, also to digitize all their invoice management processes, both for outbound and incoming invoices. As a small IT company, I thought that our experience would be or could be relevant for you, because we have been developing our product remotely. So how we work with our developers and project managers is kind of a remote product development. We also work with banks together on our implementation projects, and thus we are kind of part of their product development process and product team. When I was thinking what could be relevant for this webinar, my final conclusion was that what was true in the offline world is much more true in the digital space. So if you wanted to do something in the offline world very well, then you would need to excel it much more in the digital world, because you have much more time, you have limited time for meetings. You have to do much more coordination efforts digitally compared to when you just pull together a meeting in the bank. So what we have seen is that COVID-19 accelerates the need for digital solutions. I just read on the news that there was like almost 800% growth on Microsoft Cloud usage. And we have also seen increased interest in our products, both from banks and enterprises, because digital invoice management and digital solutions are becoming much more important now that you cannot be together physically with others. And what I said is what was true really is becoming much more true, because fast time to market is becoming more important, because those banks who have digital solutions have a competitive advantage. At the same time, in these times, you need to be much more aware of costs and implementation risks. So therefore, I think it's a good time again not to invent what you have, what some people already invented. So I think it's a good time to look for third parties and fintechs and reassess your product development strategy, because what we see with our product also is that when you use a ready product or ready-made product or half ready-made product, you can save time on the learning curve, because you don't have to invent everything that someone else already invented for you. And as mentioned, this was the case, or this is the case in the physical world, but I think now it's becoming much more important and edgy, so that you make less mistakes and minimize risk. So I think this is a key message, that look for good products, look for what you really need, what you really want to have in the bank, and don't try to invent yourself. From a different perspective, asking my colleagues what their conclusions were about the changes and what is important in digital product development, is that when you start developing the product, keep the focus on the product's purpose and have a very deep understanding on the problem you are trying to solve. And I think this is also a place where a third-party product can be helpful. So if you look at something that is existing, it's much more easier to do a gap analysis instead of trying to find out all the small details, what is important and why is important. Another important thing is that you have to have a mission for the product and segment combination. So why you are doing it, what is the goal, the business goal that you want to achieve with the product, and don't let yourself to be distracted. We have seen good examples and bad examples that someone just let themselves distracted from the product purpose and where they ended up. And we have seen good examples that they are very strict on the product focus and why they are doing it. So it's a big difference in terms of money and also human resources input even. So if you have a goal, just keep it to the straight line and try to be on the straight line. I think this is not a time when you can afford just to wander around the product purpose. You need to be very straight and very straightforward. And the third thing that I added in the today morning, that you should draw a strict line when the product is ready. Again, this is the time to market thing, and you can always aim for the most perfect feature set. You can always make improvements on the product, but I think that today it is important that you draw a strict line when the product is market ready, go to the market, and then you can still develop the product further. I gathered some advice from our lead project manager, for the implementation, because as Oljana also said, IT thing is one part, the other part is more like the management part and project management part, which is again not that different from the offline world. It's just things are much more edgy now. And what her advice was that use available IT tools to minimize time needed for discussion and the number of iterations, because these are the most time-consuming things, and time is the most valuable resource now and today. So detailed and accurate ticketing saves times. If you make the appropriate categories, then it is easier to track what has been done, what has not been done. It can save a lot of times on asking back-to-back people what has changed. So if you do clear and accurate ticketing, that is very useful for all of the team members, and minimizes time for discussions. Also, don't spam email inboxes with communication only emails, because people won't be able to answer all your emails. You won't get the necessary answers. On the other hand, people will get frustrated with 400 unread emails one day. But there are separated chat rooms where you can set up chat rooms for specific topics and general discussions, which is like a substitution of just talking to the person sitting next to you. So you can put one-on-one discussions into the digital space in with chat rooms. And the third thing, I heard from friends and other colleagues also, and people working also in banks, that bosses are trying to control their colleagues too much, and it takes a lot of time and effort just to make the control requirements, which obviously takes time from the productive work. So I advise everyone to put trust into your colleagues and employees, and minimize the control, and the above mentioned tools also help you to have the control, to have the feeling of the control that you need. On the next slide is just an example how we work together with the bank. So within Partner Hub, we are also developing our own product. We have a project, so how we look like as a project team. We have a project management, we have the front-end development team and back-end development team. As mentioned, we use ticketing systems, chat rooms. Screen shares are very useful when you are discussing something, and we have our meeting times limited, so there are specific, meetings, and we don't let it go endlessly, because that takes also a lot of time, and sometimes a longer meeting doesn't add much more value to the product development process after a while. And what we do, we have the ticketing system between us and the bank, and also we communicate only through our project management. So it's basically she is a one-stop shop in this case. So where the communication happens between project management and basically the product team of the bank. And a couple of words about our product. What we do is, as a product or as a value-added service for banks, we provide white label value-added service for banks, which can be tailor-made to the bank's needs. These features include digital invoice management, so sending invoices, receive and process digital invoices, one-click payment right from the invoice, and also we provide financial data to SME customers with access to bank transaction data and also accounting integration. I'm not going into the details why we are doing it. If anyone is interested, I am very happy to tell about our product more in detail, the purpose of the product and why we think it's useful. But now I would like to rather focus on what we provide and how we provide and what is our product development or product implementation methodology that we are now building up. So we would like to, or we are starting with a prototyping project where we have 70% of the project completed for you. This is helpful because you can save a lot of time on the project preparation. We have seen that banks spend 6 to 8 months on project preparation. So we are putting this knowledge already together, why to do it, how to do it, how can you make money on the product, why is it important. So what are the so with the prototyping project you can even save on the POC that you would do within the bank. We provide a business feature set description, what is necessary to put into an invoice management product, and we have all the IT elements gathered together that are specifically designed for this use case. So if you start a prototyping project, it's easier to put, so it's easier to imagine what your product will look like, but you have the freedom with our product to change things. So you can tailor make the solution for your business requirements. You can add or remove features, and you can also do your own front-end development, and you can even use a local team. And with these adjustments, you can go to market very quickly, and obviously you will do add-on developments and you will always improve your product. So what we think that with this methodology, project implementation for a full value-added service can be completed altogether within 6 months, from which the system implementation would take 2 to 3 months. So this is an increased pace of product development, and you can minimize the risk and resources required for the product development. So I think this is what I really wanted to say today. And then if you have questions, let us discuss. So there is still time for discussion.
Yes, thank you, Katarina. I actually encouraged to ask questions from our attendees. So we have like several minutes to the end of the webinar. While probably my question to Katarina, to you will be, what is actually the number? So how many people or product people are engaged in the case of your implementation, your product development and the implementation in the bank? So from your side and from the bank side, from your experience, and and how does it change if maybe a standards, let's say a ready-made product is implemented, or if an individual features, let's say, are implemented by the bank's request, then does it increase the number of people or resources involved, let's say?
Yeah. So I think that the project preparation phase can be eliminated. And in a project preparation, what we have seen, it's like not full time, but anything from 5 people to 10 people through, I think, 2 to 6 months, 8 months can go on. So depending on how the bank treats the project preparation, this time can be saved fully with our product. In the project implementation period, I think obviously a project manager and the product developer, and depending on how the bank puts together the team, but the product team is like 1 or 2 people. Project manager is one person, but it does not, so he or she does not be necessarily devoted full time to this project. So again, depending on how the bank puts together the team. And it is also optionality for the bank to have their own UX design team, which can be again 1 or 2 people. Testing is obviously needed from the bank side because you cannot avoid testing. And I didn't put here to the slide the IT people from the bank. We are using, obviously we need to discuss on a couple of workshops the bank's IT requirements and the security requirements, and we work with APIs. So there we don't really take resources from the bank side. If the bank decides to their third party to use their own or third party front end development team, then we would obviously talk to them. But we are also minimizing the knowledge requested by them to do the necessary adjustments. So we provide all the documentation, and obviously we can provide online workshops and discussions with them how to implement the product. This is coming from our own experience because our front end development team is also an outsourced team. So we have also the experience how to communicate with the front end people who are not our own people and not dedicated only to a certain project.
And after 6 months, so you mentioned that implementation takes 6 months, right? So after 6 months implementation, what is the team, or what is the number of people in the team should remain, to support the functions, maybe to implement some updates, etc.
It depends. So after finishing the product, we think that it's a good thing to stop developing the product further. So to just have a period of getting experience. So there basically the product team stays on hold and looks at the market reactions and what are the feedbacks from the market. And then after again a couple of months, and obviously what we have seen that these product teams do not go away but turn into more like a development teams, and that they don't actually go away, but they stay on and do their own developing the product further. However, still, what I say is that after product launch, there could be like a 4 to 6 months period when optimally when the developments are or feature developments are minimized, and then get to another development phase.
Yes, we have a question.
I have a question. Yes. So we are communicating with the bank through APIs. So if they have ready PSD2 APIs, then we are not dependent. So obviously we work with what we have and what we are provided. In this thing, we are dependent on the bank if they have proper open banking APIs, if they chose to do the integration with open banking APIs. So we have two integration points basically. One is the registration, so we need to align the registration process with the bank's registration, and we need to discuss how to integrate the product into the bank, into the online space of the bank. And the other part is the payment initiation and transaction history, which can be done with the open banking API basically. So if there is a good API, then we can work with it. If there is not a usable API, then we obviously we need to wait for that. But more and more banks are preparing the APIs and are ready to put the use of open APIs on their own or for their own good, not only third parties' good.
Thank you, Katan, for the contribution. Yes, we'll see that somebody's typing the question right now. Actually, we will be closing the webinar in a minute, let's say. So we'll see if this question will appear now. So meanwhile, I want to invite you to our next webinars as well. So this week, so this Friday on April 10, we will have the webinar devoted to the digital sales of banking products for SMEs on an example of factoring product, and how a Polish factoring fintech is doing this. And next week, on Monday, we have Agile Mondays. So now every Monday during April and May at 11 a.m., we are talking about agility. So next Monday's topic is Agile Finance. So you are welcome to join. And on April 16, we will be discussing how to digitalize trade finance services for SMEs in the banks, and how the cooperation with alternative solutions like B2B marketplaces can help with that and actually fasten the process. So I see we don't have new questions at the moment, so I'm closing this webinar. Thank you all for attention. Thank you once again, Katalin, for joining us, and see you next time online. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.